A new chapter in the South China Sea power struggle has just been written. The Philippines has opened a new military base near the Luzon Strait, one of the most strategic choke points in the entire Indo-Pacific. This move is being described as a direct challenge to China's growing naval dominance. But the real question is, will it actually deter Beijing? Or has Manila just placed itself on the front line of a much larger storm? Welcome to Shadows of Strategy, where we dive deep into the hidden currents of global geopolitics. The Luzon Strait is no ordinary location. It sits between the northern Philippines and southern Taiwan, acting as one of the main maritime gateways from the South China Sea into the Pacific Ocean. For decades, military planners in Washington, Beijing, and Tokyo have understood its importance. Whoever controls the Luzon Strait can effectively monitor or even restrict naval traffic between the South China Sea and the broader Pacific. And now, by building up a military presence here, the Philippines is stepping into a role that could reshape the entire balance of power in the region. The new base, situated in northern Luzon, will host Philippine forces, but is also expected to serve as a key site for joint U.S.-Philippine operations under the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement. American forces already have access to multiple Philippine bases, but this one is unique. It faces Taiwan directly. This means in the event of a crisis across the Taiwan Strait, U.S. and allied forces could operate from Philippine territory, providing logistical support, staging areas, and even forward deployment zones. To Beijing, this is nothing short of encirclement. China has responded with predictable anger. State media has called the base a dangerous provocation and accused Manila of acting as a pawn for Washington. Beijing views the Luzon Strait not only as a vital shipping lane, but also as a military corridor for its submarines based on Hainan Island, which often transit through the Bashi Channel into the Pacific. By placing a base here, the Philippines is signaling that Chinese movements will now be under greater scrutiny and potential pressure. But why is Manila making this move now? The answer lies in a mix of rising threats and shifting alliances. Over the past 2 years, Chinese vessels, both Coast Guard and maritime militia, have repeatedly harassed Philippine resupply missions to outposts in the Spratly Islands. Collisions, water cannon attacks, and aggressive blockades have raised fears that an accident could spiral into conflict. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr., unlike his predecessor Rodrigo Duterte, has taken a much tougher stance. Instead of downplaying tensions, Marcos has doubled down on defense ties with the United States, Japan, and Australia. This new base is the clearest signal yet that Manila is aligning itself with the U.S. security architecture. For the United States, the timing couldn't be more critical. Washington has been working to build what some analysts call the first island chain fortress, a string of allied bases stretching from Japan through Taiwan, the Philippines, and down to Southeast Asia. The idea is simple: create a line of deterrence to contain China's military expansion. The Luzon base fits neatly into this strategy, essentially plugging a gap in the chain. From a U.S. perspective, this strengthens deterrence. From China's perspective, it looks like a tightening noose. The Philippines, however, walks a delicate line. On one hand, Manila benefits from U.S. security guarantees and international support against Chinese pressure. On the other hand, its economy is deeply intertwined with China, its largest trading partner. This duality raises the question: is Manila risking too much by militarizing its northern frontier? Will economic retaliation follow, with trade restrictions or investment slowdowns from Beijing? History suggests it's very possible. China has a record of using economic coercion to punish smaller states for perceived slights. Meanwhile, Taiwan is watching closely. A Philippine base in the Luzon Strait could be a lifeline in the event of a Chinese blockade. Taipei has limited maritime access, and resupply routes through the Luzon Strait could become critical. For Japan, too, the base is strategically significant. Tokyo relies heavily on sea lanes passing near the Philippines. And a stronger Philippine military posture indirectly protects Japanese energy imports from the Middle East. In this way, Manila's move has ripple effects across the entire Indo-Pacific. But does this base truly deter China? That depends on how deterrence is measured. Militarily, the Philippine armed forces remain relatively weak compared to China's Navy and Air Force. Even with U.S. support, the Philippines cannot hope to match Beijing in a full-scale conflict. What the base does provide, however, is strategic depth. It complicates Chinese planning by adding another potential front, and strengthens the credibility of U.S. commitments. If Chinese commanders know that American forces can operate from Luzon, they must factor that into any Taiwan scenario or South China Sea escalation. This uncertainty in itself is a form of deterrence. Yet, deterrence can also backfire. By hosting foreign troops and facilities, the Philippines may inadvertently make itself a target. Chinese military planners could view Luzon bases as legitimate strike objectives in a war, pulling the Philippines into a conflict it might have otherwise tried to avoid. Some Philippine opposition leaders have already voiced this concern, warning that Manila is sacrificing neutrality in exchange for becoming a battlefield. International reactions highlight this divide. Washington and Tokyo have applauded the move, praising Manila's resolve. Australia has expressed support as well, noting that freedom of navigation in the region benefits everyone. China, as expected, has issued stern warnings, while Russia has called it a destabilizing development. Within ASEAN, responses are more cautious. Some Southeast Asian states, wary of antagonizing China, prefer to keep Manila's decision at arm's length. Economically, the base could bring short-term benefits. Infrastructure projects, U.S. military aid, and local jobs will flow into northern Luzon. But the long-term cost may be measured in trade friction with China. Philippine farmers, exporters, and investors could feel the pinch if Beijing decides to quietly reduce imports or slow down approvals for joint projects. Marcos Jr. is betting that security outweighs economic risk, but it's a gamble with no guaranteed outcome. So, will this base deter China? The answer is both yes and no. Yes, in the sense that it strengthens the U.S.-Philippines alliance, raises the cost of Chinese aggression, and reassures partners like Japan and Taiwan. No, in the sense that it does not fundamentally change the balance of power. China's Navy, Air Force, and missile arsenal remain overwhelmingly superior. What the base really does is create a tripwire. Any Chinese action against it risks immediate escalation with the United States, something Beijing would prefer to avoid. For Manila, deterrence is not about defeating China. It's about raising the price of aggression high enough that Beijing reconsiders its moves. In this narrow but crucial sense, the Luzon base may succeed. But it also ties the Philippines' fate more tightly to U.S.-China rivalry, reducing its ability to maneuver independently. In the long run, Manila has traded strategic ambiguity for strategic clarity. And clarity, while powerful, can also be dangerous. The opening of the Luzon Strait base marks a turning point not just for the Philippines, but for the entire Indo-Pacific. As lines are drawn and alliances harden, this small island nation has become a critical piece on the global chessboard.